Buenos dias, Erica here, Assistant Director of RoLa Languages and Spanish, English, and French teacher for today's lesson on community Spanish. We have a topic a little bit more advanced today than on the lessons of the previous 3 days. Today we're going to be looking at the pronombres de objeto directo e indirecto, or direct object pronouns, indirect object pronouns. Don't worry about the scary grammar words. I'm going to explain a little bit more what that means as we get to it. So without further ado, let's get started. So here we have the pronombres de objeto directo y indirecto. So this lesson is more for us students who have already learned some of this in class, but it's just to kind of review a little with you to make sure it's clear. I know I've got these questions for my students all the time. They have some trouble to keep straight the difference between the direct ones and the indirect ones and how to use them. And especially then, what do you do when you have two in the same sentence? So we're going to look at each of these cases and then practice together. So first we have here are direct objects, direct, pronombres de objeto directo. So first, again, let's break down these terms. What does it mean when I say a pronoun or an object or direct object pronoun? So first, a pronoun is a word that we use to replace another word. So for example, when I'm talking about myself, instead of saying my name again and again and again, I'm going to use I. So I is a pronoun that replaces my name. So we have lots of different kinds of pronouns in English and in many other languages. So this is when I say pronoun, that's what I mean. It's a word we use to replace another word. Now, when we're talking about object pronouns, what it means is replacing something or someone and usually it means that in the sentence, there's a verb, there's an action, and this action is happening to something or happening to someone. And so that's what we're going to be looking at with these types of object pronouns. We have indirect ones and direct ones, and I'm going to explain more in detail what that means. So first, for the direct object pronouns, these are things that are directly affected by the verb. That's why we call them direct object pronouns. So for example, I have my example here, yo como el pastel, means I eat the cake. So the cake is directly affected by my action of eating, right? Because it's the thing that I eat. So that's when we say a direct object, that's what we mean. It's something that is directly impacted by the verb. So in this case, in my example sentence, it's the cake, because cake is the thing that's being eaten. It's the most directly affected by my action of eating. So this is our direct object. So this is usually something or someone. So if, for example, we say, like, the way to think about direct objects is if you can ask the question what or who, and it's answered by this thing, then most likely that is the direct object. So here are some of our helpful words we want to know when talking about direct objects. So the first one, for example, for me, that replaces like me, for example, if I'm the one who I'm directly affected by the verb. Like, for example, if I say he hugs me, then I'm the one being hugged. I'm receiving the hug, right? I'm the direct impact of the hug. So this one, for me, it's me. Now, if it's something that's happening directly to you, it's te. Now, here's where the students get confused, because as you can see, for the indirect ones, we share the same ones for the first two, but here's where we got to diverge. So for this one, if we're talking about replacing him or her, or if it's an object that doesn't have a gender in English, like it, this is what this group is about. So we use lo to replace like him or a masculine object in Spanish. Again, as we know, there's objects don't have gender in English, but in Spanish and many other languages, all of the objects have a gender. So for example, like this works perfectly for the example I gave before. When I said yo como el pastel, I eat the cake, but then I want to say, instead of I eat the cake, I want to say I eat it. Okay, so then I say yo lo como, means I eat it. And so this lo replaces el pastel. Again, going back to the idea of what a pronoun is. Again, something that replaces another word. So yo lo como. So this pastel, because it's masculine, be replaced by lo. And as you can see, we have a little bit of a change in the order of the sentence. So originally we went yo como el pastel, but then once we make the replacement, then the lo is going to go in front of the verb. Okay, so yo lo como would be I eat it. Now, if we had a feminine object, or like, and again, if we were trying to say I know you wouldn't normally say this, but if you want to say I eat him, then it would be yo lo como as well. So it's for masculine objects or for masculine people, and then feminine for vice versa would be for la. So if I want to say, for example, I'm eating the dinner, yo como la cena, a feminine thing, then I would say yo la como, would be I eat it, as in the dinner. So these are, again, lo or la replaces either him or her, or it's an object, like we would say it in English, but as we know in Spanish, everything has a gender. So for masculine objects, we use lo. For feminine objects, we use la. Now, it's something that's happening to us, then we use nos. If it's something that's happening to vosotros, all of you, which is the word we use in Spain, vosotros, then it's os, okay? And then finally for the plurals, if we want to say like them, again, it could be a group of people or it could be a group of objects. Those are both represented by them in English. So in Spanish, we're going to use either los or las, again, depending on if the thing is masculine or if it's feminine, we use los or las. So these are our direct object pronouns. Again, the things that are directly impacted by the verb. So these are, again, usually if we're asking the question who or what, the answer to that question would be the direct object, okay? So those are the direct, the ones that are direct. Now to move over to our other group here about the indirects, this one is maybe a little bit more challenging for us to think about. So when I say indirect, we mean something that is also affected by the verb in some way, but it's not a direct impact, like the first category. Again, like my first example, yo como el pastel, I eat the cake. The cake is directly receiving my action of eating, right? It's the thing that got eaten. But then when we talk about indirect ones, that's where these ones are more often we use with people. It's like someone receives something, but they don't receive the direct impact of the action. So for example, I have another example over here. So, yo doy un consejo a mi amigo. I give advice to my friend. So, and in this case, the friend to my friend is the indirect, because again, we're not giving the friend, like I'm not picking up my friend and giving him to someone, okay? But I'm giving my friend some advice. So the advice is the thing that I'm giving. So the advice is direct, but the friend is indirect, because again, I'm not giving the friend. I'm like the friend, I'm not picking up my friend and giving him to someone else, so it's not direct. But the friend is also receiving my giving in another way because he's receiving the advice I'm giving. So he is also affected by the verb, but it's in an indirect way, hence the word indirect object pronoun. So again, this one I know can be a little bit more confusing sometimes for us to think about, but it's really, when we ask questions, usually like to whom is something going, or for whom, these are the answers that give us an indirect object. Again, who is it going to, or who is this thing for? Again, the person is receiving the thing, the object, or receiving the action, but in a kind of indirect way. So the pronouns for this one, they share a lot of similar pronouns between the direct and indirect, which I think is part of what can sometimes add to students' confusion about which one are they using. Because if they say, if I'm using the same word, then it's hard. In my brain, I don't separate between what's direct and what's indirect. But sometimes that will present another challenge if you're not sure exactly what you're saying. But nevertheless, they do share the same words for several of the forms. So for me, again, it's the same thing, where it's also going to be me again. But again, if we take this as an example, if I say like he gives a shirt to me, again, the shirt is what's being directly given, not me. I'm not the one being given. So that's why it's indirect. So it's me. Now, if it's to you or for you, it's te. If it's to him or to her or to usted, if we're being polite you, then it's le. So again, it's to you or to him, for him, to her, for her, or to you, for you. So again, when we think about indirect objects, it's usually to someone or for someone. If it's for us or to us, it's nosotros. If it's to you all in Spain, vosotros, or for you all in Spain, vosotros, it's os, again, same as the direct one. Now, if it is for them or to them, if it's a ellos or a ellas, or para ellos or para ellas, or if it's to you all in other countries outside of Spain with ustedes, a ustedes, then we're going to replace it with les instead. So as we can see, there's kind of two two distinctions between the indirect and the direct. So we have, for this one, with the direct ones, lo and la, but for indirect, it's le. And then for the plurals, we have los and las, and it's this one, it's les. But otherwise, the other four are shared between me, te, nos, and os. Okay. So now, how do we work with our indirect object pronouns? Again, we did our example over here. Yo como el pasta becomes yo lo como. But now to do an example of an indirect. So if I say yo doy un consejo a mi amigo, I give advice to my friend, I'm going to rewrite this as yo le doy un consejo. Yo le doy un consejo. It's like saying I give him some advice, or I give her some advice. Again, if we just use the word le, it could be to him or to her or to usted. The word le is not specific. We might need some other context to help us know who is being referred to, because just the word le on its own can replace these several different people. But again, because I have my first sentence here with this as a mi amigo, I have some context here. But that's why sometimes when you see a sentence, it might have both the pronoun and also repeat the person again, which I know in general, the idea is that a pronoun replaces, so you don't write it again. But again, because the word le is sometimes so vague, maybe you'll see in a sentence where someone will still include the person, even though they have the word that's supposed to replace the person. So they will put both of them just to be clear about who is being referred to. So I could say, yo le doy un consejo a mi amigo. That would be correct in Spanish still, even though, again, usually the purpose of le would be to replace a mi amigo. But I'm trying to clarify, if I didn't have this first sentence and I just said yo le doy, then the listener would say, I don't know who that is. Is it a él? Is it a ella? Is it a usted? I don't know. So I might need to add a little bit more just to clarify. So those cases, like with le or also with les, we have situations like that where we might need to add the person back again just to clarify for the listener who we're referring to. Okay. So, but the important thing is that just like we did with this one, it means once we do the replacement, that the word, the pronoun goes before the verb. So again, normally our other words go after the verb, but when these phrases, it's going to go before. So yo le doy un consejo. Okay, so now we have two examples, one with a direct and one with indirect. So now the next step, once we go to the next level, if we want to say, okay, what do we do if we have two objects in a sentence? Like if we have a direct and an indirect, we say, what's the procedure? How do I deal with these two objects? So I want to give you a couple of examples, and then we're going to practice all together about how to do these kind of phrases. So when we have to combine two objects, like in this sentence, when we said, yo doy un consejo a mi amigo, this sentence already has two objects built in. Yo doy un consejo, so the consejo, the advice, is direct, right? It's the thing that's being given. And we also have a mi amigo, so we also have an indirect in the same sentence. So again, consejo is direct one, and a mi amigo is the indirect one. So we have two objects built into this sentence. So the way we work with that is the order of things, as you can see here, is first we need to put the indirect and then the direct. So if you need a nice like handy dandy formula, that's what you should use. So if you have two objects, it always goes indirect first and then direct. So that's what we should do, is to put two together. So let's say instead, if I want to say I give advice to you, okay? So, and then I want to say, I give you it, as in I give you it, the it refers to the advice. So I would say, so yo doy un consejo a ti would be the original sentence. Then I would say, yo te doy un consejo, which is the indirect replace. And then I would say, yo te lo doy, for I give it to you. So te replacing a ti and lo replacing un consejo. And you can see the order. Yo te lo doy. Okay, so that's how we would normally do it. Now, we have, unfortunately, one extra little complication in Spanish. So this comes like in a sentence like we had here. In terms of our pronunciation, it sounds a little bit kind of unclear if we have these two little words and both of them sound super similar, le and lo. So for us as a listener, sometimes it would be a little bit difficult to hear what the person is saying. So what Spanish does in order to correct for this or kind of help is they have you make a special change, which says if you have two objects and both of them start with L, so for example, like lo and la and le and lo and la and les, or los and las and los and las and les. So these are all combinations of two words that start with L. So what they have you do is they actually make this special change, and is again, it's just their particular exception that the le is going to change to se. Again, it's not for grammar. It's really just for pronunciation purposes to make sure that it's clear. So for example, so again, the case I had here, if I just followed my replacements, I would say yo le lo doy, but that actually is incorrect in Spanish. I should say yo se lo doy. So again, the le is going to change to se, or if for the case of les, we would also change that to se. But again, it's just for pronunciation purposes. So so we're going to make this special change. It's only in these cases where we have two objects next to each other and they both start with an L sound. So if you have like me and te, there's no problem. If you have like nos and nos, there's no problem. So it's again, only when we have these double combinations of two things together that both use the L sound that we have to worry about making this special exception. So again, the final version of the sentence would be yo se lo doy, literally I give him it, as in I give the advice, I give a piece of advice to him as the original, or to my friend. And now we've reduced it all the way down to I give him it, okay? So now we're gonna do some practice of this together. And I'm going to give you some example sentences and we can work them out together, and I'll share my screen so you can take a look. Now, so if we go here, sharing my screen. Hopefully you all can see that. So I have some examples. We're just going to try the first 5 together. So I have an original sentence with all of the words, so including the indirect and the direct objects. And so we're going to practice making kind of different versions of it. So first version is going to be with just the indirect replaced. Just the indirect replaced. Next one would be one with just the direct replaced. And then we make a final version with both replaced. So let's work on these together. I'll talk you through it. So we have the first sentence, nosotros pusimos la chaqueta a los niños. So saying we put the jacket on the children. So first case is to identify what's the indirect. So again, this is the thing is to whom or for whom, or that usually it answers. So in this case, it's a los niños. A los niños is going to be the indirect object. So I'll give that a little bit underline. So a los niños would be indirect. Now, the thing that's direct, so what is directly impacted by the verb, that's the jacket, la chaqueta, okay? So that's the thing that's being put. So if we're going to do our first version where we replace just the indirect, we're going to say, nosotros les pusimos la chaqueta. Again, les to replace a los niños. Nosotros les pusimos la chaqueta. So that's what just the indirect one replaced. Now, if we're going to do one with the direct, just the direct replace, with this, we said is la chaqueta. So then it would be nosotros la pusimos a los niños. Okay, so that's with just the direct replace. Nosotros la pusimos a los niños. Now, to put it all together, to put both the direct and indirect in the same sentence. So we're going to have, again, nosotros les la pusimos. So again, les representing a los niños and la representing la chaqueta. But now, as we said in our special exception, if we have this problem where now we have two object pronouns, they both start with L sounds, it sounds a little bit awkward. So we're going to make that change and change from our les, representing a los niños, to se. So the full sentence at the end would be nosotros se la pusimos. Okay, nosotros se la pusimos. So let's try a couple more together. And this one, the next couple ones, I'll let you think about it more in your own head as I just walked you through the first one. So if we look at número 2, Carlos dio un regalo a ella. So Carlos gave a gift to her. So first question is, what's the indirect object here? So what answers the question to whom or for whom? It's a ella, okay, a ella. Now, what is going to be the direct object? What is directly impacted by the verb of gave? So it's un regalo, a gift, okay, un regalo. So now think about your first version. So for a sentence where just the indirect a ella is replaced, what's it going to be? Carlos le dio un regalo, because the le representing a ella. Now, how about a version with just the direct one replaced? It'd be Carlos lo, replacing un regalo, lo dio a ella. Okay. And now to do the double replacement, we'd have Carlos le lo dio, but as we spoke about, we can't say le lo, we can't have two ones with starting with the L sound. So we're going to change the first one to se. So Carlos se lo dio. Carlos gave her it. Se lo dio. Okay. Now let's try number three. Número tres. Ellos vendieron sus coches a vosotros. They sold their cars to you all in Spain, vosotros. So first, what's the indirect? Answer the question, to whom or for whom? A vosotros. And then how about for the direct object, the thing that's being directly impacted by the verb? It's sus coches, their cars, because that's the thing that's being sold. So now if we're going to make the version of the sentence with just the indirect replaced, ellos os vendieron sus coches. Ellos os vendieron sus coches. Now, the next version of the sentence with just the direct replaced. Ellos los, because sus coches, ellos los vendieron a vosotros. And now, the final version with the double replacement. Ellos os los vendieron. You know, I know it sounds maybe a little strange, but ellos os for a vosotros, los for sus coches, vendieron. Ellos os los vendieron. Okay, a lot of similar sounds, right, one after the other. All right, we'll do two more examples before we wrap up for today. So, número cuatro, number four, vosotros disteis un regalo a vuestra hermana. You all gave a gift to your sister. Okay, so again, who is indirect, or what is the indirect here? It's a vuestra hermana, to your sister. Okay, now how about for the direct object, the thing that's directly impacted by the verb? It's un regalo again, just like we had in number two. So now if we're going to say with the first of the indirect replaced, so this one would be vosotros le disteis un regalo. The tricky part here is when you see the word vuestra, then your mind might jump and say, oh, it's vosotros, so I should use os. But if you think about it, we're saying to your sister, it's not actually to you all, it's to her, right? So we should say vosotros le disteis un regalo. And now the next version with just the direct replace. Vosotros lo disteis a vuestra hermana. And the final version with both replaced. Vosotros, and again, we would say le lo disteis, but we cannot say le lo, so it's going to be vosotros se lo disteis. Okay, now last one for today's lesson, número 5. Ella sirvió la comida a nosotros. She served the food to us. So first, who or what is the indirect? It's a nosotros. Okay, a nosotros. Now what about the direct object? It's la comida. Once you start getting the hang of it, these can be pretty formulaic, and it's easy to just kind of plug in the parts that you need to find. So now, next version with just the indirect replaced would be ella nos, because it's a nosotros, ella nos sirvió la comida. Now, one with just the direct object replaced. Ella la sirvió, because of la comida, ella la sirvió a nosotros. And finally, last one, is to put both of them together. So we have one with the indirect and direct replaced in the same sentence. Ella nos la sirvió. Ella nos la sirvió. Remembering indirect always comes before direct. Okay. Whew, I know that's a lot of steps. So thank you for your efforts. Thank you for trying to keep practicing. These things definitely take a lot of practice. So good luck, and I will see you tomorrow for our last community Spanish of this week a las 10 a.m. Adiós.